If you're my age, maybe a little younger or older, you may have been a target for nostalgia marketing. This is a type of marketing that essentially capitalizes off of your memories. Whether that's McDonald's releasing their Halloween pails this past Halloween, seeing Tamagotchis at Walmart a few years ago, or watching Fuller House, you've been targeted by this marketing tactic. While this type of marketing has been around for a bit, it's become even more popular in recent times, and my theory is because of social media. Being an older millennial, I can speak from my experience that a good portion of my life at this point has been online. It all started with Instant Messenger, then MySpace, then the behemoth that is Facebook, and every other platform that has come out since. Nostalgia marketing also uses FOMO, which is fear of missing out. A great example is something I just mentioned about the McDonald's Halloween pails. With all of that said, is nostalgia marketing unethical? That's what we'll be discussing today. Disclaimer: everything stated in this video is based on my research. All of my sources will be linked in the description box below. My opinions will be added in as well. This is meant to be entertainment and educational and is not being presented as a fact. I am not a journalist, nor am I presenting myself as such. The information being presented is public information and what I know to the best of my knowledge and research. Please don't stop at my video and continue doing your own research. Lately, I've been thinking about a type of marketing called nostalgia marketing. This type of marketing is playing on the consumer's emotions and a sense of longing for easier times. This can be bittersweet for some, if not most consumers. Nostalgia marketing, in my opinion, can fall under the umbrella of neuromarketing, which is a rabbit hole and a video I want to make in the future. I do believe social media has aided companies and brands in this type of marketing. Social media has pretty much made it easier. I've been guilty of sharing posts and even creating my own content revolving around nostalgia. The typical posts of what it was like to eat out at fast food restaurants in the 90s is a recent one that I shared, or the typical only 90s kids would understand type of post. If you scroll on any social media platform, they all have posts or videos sharing things from their past, or even poking fun at their past selves. I can relate to these types of posts or videos, and it does make me feel nostalgic. So in a way, these influencers are also marketing themselves in a nostalgia marketing type of way. Some of these posts or videos have been playing on the screen as I've been talking, but there are two in particular that I thought of when researching for this video. The first creator that I thought of is one that takes it a step further and shares how certain songs that have come out, older generations might think back and say, oh, the original song is this, when in reality, that beat or song has been redone more than once and has gone back to even older generations than the one thinking this. Then there is another one who I recently saw wearing a pair of bell-bottoms, and while she was mimicking her millennial self from back in the day, this was a pant style that has already made its rounds previously. I've fallen for nostalgia marketing, for example, when Reptar bars were released back in, I believe it was 2017 or 2018. I was in line to buy several of them. My taste buds weren't fans of the taste, but I was excited to have a permanently green tongue after eating one of those Reptar bars. I even got one of the McDonald's Halloween buckets this past Halloween because of the nostalgia aspect of it. But before we go over the marketing aspect, let's briefly go over some information regarding nostalgia itself. In case you want to skip around during this video, there will be timestamps below. Nostalgia might be pretty simple and straightforward, but while doing my research for this video, I came across some interesting information regarding the psychology behind nostalgia. According to one source, they state that nostalgia is a psychological occurrence that refers to a feeling of longing or wistfulness for the past. It can be caused by a variety of things, including the smell of food that one's mother used to make, a favorite song from one's childhood, or photos of friends or family members. Nostalgia can evoke strong emotions and can be a generative force in shaping our memories and identity. Even things that we don't necessarily miss can trigger feelings of nostalgia, such as rotary phones or 8-track tape players, because they evoke strong memories of the past. Now, in case you didn't know, nostalgia was once considered a mental illness. The word nostalgia itself actually comes from the Greek words nostos, which means return, and algos, which means pain. This means that the meaning of the word we associate with more of a positive experience today is actually meant to be more of a negative thing. A Swiss physician, Johann Hofer, was the one who, I guess you can kind of say, came up with this word or this term to describe this feeling. He believed that nostalgia was a cerebral disease of sorts, and symptoms included obsessive thinking of home, so I'm assuming what he meant here was kind of like homesickness, bouts of weeping, anxiety, palpitations, anorexia, and insomnia. However, this was an extremely long time ago that nostalgia and homesickness were thought to be mental illnesses. According to the National Library of Medicine, they state, the psychic pain associated with longing to return home had been considered a mental disorder for centuries, especially in Europe, where it was a sign of moral weakness between nations. Nostalgia's effects on American Civil War soldiers, anxiety, depression, and sleep and appetite disturbances, for example, were described by clinicians and linked to significant morbidity and mortality. Since then, although these effects of combat have been of interest, focus has shifted to the psychic trauma, relegating the concept of nostalgia to be an unclassified but commonly encountered condition. Besides wartime trauma, symptomatic conditions related to nostalgia have been described among displaced persons and refugees living in the longing for their homelands. More recently, nostalgia has pervaded culture as a benign pastime, with no implications for psychopathology. Finally, the longing for a return to an idyllic or imagined lifestyle has returned amid worldwide quarantining and isolation during the COVID-19 pandemic. In this new sense, nostalgia has become a remedy rather than a disease. We identify 4 major iterations of nostalgia: the medical condition of homesickness, the condition studied in wartime, the application to migration and social displacement, and as a remedy for existential anxiety. We conclude that nostalgia per se is neither pathological nor normative, but a consistent phenomenon in human existence that should not be overlooked in cultural assessment and psychotherapy. In other words, just as I mentioned earlier, nostalgia was not considered a positive thing back in the day, and some people might still not consider it a positive thing. Now that we've gone over nostalgia a little bit, what is nostalgia marketing? This is when companies market things that may make their target market's memories be triggered. This can bring on positive emotions, which is what brands hope for. Of course, certain things can also bring up bad memories or emotions depending on the person, but they obviously hope for the positive side of things. In other words, brands take advantage of your memories for easier and happier times to try to sell you something that is old but new, a modern version, if you will. According to one source, this technique can be particularly effective in industries with a strong connection to the past, such as food and beverages, fashion, and entertainment. For example, a fashion brand might release a collection that draws inspiration from iconic styles of the past. This creates a sense of nostalgia for the fashion of previous decades. I'd have to agree with this statement. As soon as I started seeing certain things come back into fashion or just other things in general from my childhood, I jumped on it really fast. From butterfly clips to the Reptar bars I spoke about earlier, and even a Tamagotchi. If you watched my one video about Q Sciences, I'm pretty sure that it's a deep dive that I did. I say that if you hear any weird beeping, it's my Tamagotchi in that video. I recently looked into purchasing a Skip It off of eBay, but when I looked at the prices, it actually bummed me out a little bit. The Skip It that I had was now listed for $50+. I'm sure there will be people that purchase them even with that price. Now that I have a daughter, I've actually been rewatching some old cartoons to be able to introduce to her, one of which was Madeline, and we even bought a Madeline doll for her. It's the same Madeline doll that I also had, which brought me back to my childhood. Of course, someone like myself who is a millennial isn't the only generation that has been targeted. If you look at fashion alone, it always repeats itself, but it'll change certain things to be slightly different, or it'll be exactly the same. There are reboots or re-releases of things all the time that can target really any generation. If you think about it, any remakes of my favorite genre of movies, which is horror, a lot of the classics have been remade. Or if you look at the Halloween franchise, that's a perfect example of nostalgia with the most recent one. What I'm trying to say here is that nostalgia marketing isn't anything new. It's been around for a long time. However, in my opinion, it's done more in present day due to a lot of recent generations having access to the internet and social media. Our memories are now being preserved online, whereas in previous generations, they didn't really have that option. This can be a good and a bad thing. I myself am happy that I'm an older millennial because I feel as though I grew up in a special time, and I know that there is this constant battle of millennials versus boomers, and now it's Gen Z versus millennials, or millennials versus Gen Z, whatever you want to say. This has nothing to do with any of that kind of stuff. I personally do enjoy being a millennial because, like I just said, I feel like I grew up in a really special time. I saw the world with no internet and social media, and it wasn't until college that I created my MySpace account. Well, unless you count Instant Messenger, that became a thing for me in high school, but connecting to the internet was a process. Anyway, Brian Greenberg, CEO and founder of Insurist, which is an insurance comparison and review business, told CMS Wire that the nostalgia marketing trend is something that has been growing in popularity over the last few years. This type of marketing capitalizes on feelings of nostalgia by using elements from the past to create a nostalgic feeling in consumers. In this same CMS Wire article, they stated that Brian Greenberg believes that the key to making nostalgia marketing work is to first understand what makes people feel nostalgic in the first place, which I feel like that's kind of common sense, but the answer is simple. They're remembering something they love from their past and they're longing for it again. CMS Wire also spoke with James Brooks, who is the CEO and founder of Glassview, which is a video advertising platform provider. James was talking about forgetting bad past memories and how this phenomenon is well known. He said whether this is through suppression or thought substitution is up for debate. But the result is clear. With more good memories than bad, over time, folks tend to paint rosier pictures of their past. Knowing this, top realtors bake bread when showing a house for sale. After all, smell is the sense scientists believe is most closely related to memory. I will say that when we were looking for a house, this never happened to us where the realtors were baking bread, but I'm sure that it has happened. I'm sure that it has happened. But anyway, James also spoke about how regardless of what you're selling, when a consumer associates a brand with positive memories from their childhood or even well into adult life, it's good for business. Then there is this one article I came across by Forbes. Now, while I don't agree with parts of their article because nostalgia marketing, in my opinion, has been around for a while, it's not just a millennial thing, but I do think that it works really well with millennials. But they said something that makes so much sense from a business standpoint. They said, in an age of impersonal digital media, building social connectedness through nostalgia is an easy way for companies to leverage the optimistic feelings that often a company walks down memory lane. Associating brand messaging with positive references from the 90s, 80s, and even the 70s humanizes brands, forging meaningful connections between the past and present. This next portion is going to talk about if nostalgia marketing is challenging to use. I think the answer to whether or not it's challenging to use is yes and no. It's a very niche type of marketing. Something that is nostalgic to baby boomers might not be nostalgic to millennials. However, an example of how two generations can share nostalgia with something together is with parents. My father loved Pink Floyd and he had a massive record collection. Well, my husband and I recently purchased an antique record player and radio, and we've purchased some records, but I had to make sure that I had Pink Floyd because I share that nostalgic memory of listening to Pink Floyd with my father for the first time. But then on the other hand, if you take something such as Lisa Frank, which I've done a deep dive on, I highly recommend you watch part 1 and 2. I'll leave it linked below, but anyway, Lisa Frank was huge during my childhood. When I was doing research for my deep dive, as unethical as certain things were about the company, I couldn't help but still have the memory of getting a Lisa Frank folder with 2 whales on it for the first time. Let's say that they were to do a collab with Lisa Frank, which they have done many of those, like a lot of those. But targeting millennials or even younger Gen Xers would be the better way to go than Gen Z. Lisa Frank was popular in the late 80s and early 90s, whereas kids and young adults of the Gen Z generation weren't even alive yet for the height of Lisa Frank. Some of them might remember seeing it, but they may not hold that same nostalgic feeling as generations before them. Then there is also making sure that something that was popular back then isn't, for example, dangerous or in bad taste today. I know that this is going to be an extreme example, but I remember seeing this photo one day of what car seats for children looked like back in the 1950s. And first and foremost, it's so incredibly unsafe, but let's say that a company was to bring back something like that. Again, I know that this is a very extreme example, but let's say that they were to bring something back like that as a nostalgia marketing campaign. It would flop. First and foremost, people who were young adults or even children back in the 1950s most likely do not have small children. I mean, they may have grandchildren, but I think y'all get the point that I'm trying to make here. But even with them having possible grandchildren, those car seats are so freaking dangerous. So a campaign like that just wouldn't make sense, even if it was something that someone is reminded of from their past, because maybe they have good memories of going to get ice cream on a Sunday with their parents in a Chevy Bel Air and their sibling was sitting next to them in one of these car seats. Yes, that might be a very positive and nostalgic memory, but like I said, the seat would be dangerous and it wouldn't sell. Well, maybe, unless if there are some people out there that would purchase it as just like a collector's item where they would just put it on display somewhere. But most likely, in my opinion, I don't think that that would be the case. So the question is nostalgia marketing unethical? At the end of the day, this is a type of marketing tactic, just like many other types of tactics out there. The brand has one goal, and that is to sell their products, which means marketing it in a way that will get the customer to purchase. I think that this could possibly be done in an ethical manner, but at the same time, I do think that it's manipulative in a way, just like multi-level marketing, which is what I've talked about a lot on this channel. These companies and brands are capitalizing off of our memories. Personally, I love when I see reboots or re-releases, and as I've already said, I've purchased certain things that remind me of simpler and happier times. Even though I do think this type of marketing can be possibly, maybe done in an ethical manner, with its manipulative nature, I don't know. I feel like that's the unethical part, is that it's just manipulating you and it's playing off of your emotions, of your inner child, or maybe good memories that you have from your past. Maybe you're someone who doesn't have very many good memories, and there are certain things where those are good to you. They are positive memories and positive experiences that you have, and these companies are using that to their advantage and trying to sell you something. In my opinion, it's just another cash grab for brands. I guess really any brand or company can be capitalizing off of our memories, emotions, or our need or want for something. Their bottom line is to sell things through marketing them off. We've seen it time and time again on how MLMs capitalize off of their reps. They don't have to advertise like normal companies do because their reps, in my opinion, of course, become their best customers. In addition, these reps are advertising the company, whether that be by recruiting or actually talking about the products like they're supposed to. Uplines within MLMs encourage their downline to talk about their why and tell their rags to riches story or their sob story. It's all to capitalize off of emotions and manipulation. With all that said, before I start rambling even more, nostalgia marketing is capitalizing off of memories, and that in and of itself is unethical. But it works, even with myself. And to be honest, I love seeing parts of my childhood being modernized, even if I know that the brands are capitalizing off of those good memories that I do have.